At this point, I'm going to speed up the playback quite a bit because, in all, this is probably about 30 minutes worth of work trying to go through and sculpt an entire beard. So, if you prefer, you can skip forward a bit where we will cover the usage of the different curve profiles toward the end of the video. As with most any sculpting project, you're going to have a phase where you're blocking out with large or very rough shapes. So that's pretty much what I'm doing now. I'm using large tubes. And once we have more volume, then I'll start to reduce it down to smaller and smaller strands. Every once in a while, you'll have a stray strand or two because of the snapping where 3D Coat is assuming as you're hovering over objects, it wants to snap to them. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. Nevertheless, whenever you do get those strands, you can always go back and hold down the shift key and smooth while you're working in voxel mode because it acts sort of like an erase brush, if you will. You could also use the cutoff tool as well. It's really good for cutting off entire sections. So if you have a lot of strands that you want to cut or trim away, it's always a good option to turn to. And that includes if you're in surface mode. All right, I skipped forward just a bit while I tweak the proportions of the beard, and now we are ready to look at using the individual shapes from your curves palette. So we can use this in conjunction with the snake tool by selecting one of these. Let's choose the chain here. Your draw mode, as I mentioned earlier, will affect how it looks because of the pen pressure. So what we really want is something constant, such as this absolute or constant draw mode here. I've already created a new layer and added a little bit of resolution to it, so we are ready to start. Now you'll notice how it's sinking into the object, but that's because of what I mentioned earlier about the smoothing speed. So let's clear everything from that layer. And I'm going to turn the smoothing speed down to nothing. That way it clings to the side without any interference. If we were to use something like one of these other draw modes that are dependent upon your pressure, then we would see something like this. See how it's smaller on one end than the other? I'm pressing down harder here and it changes the shape. And sometimes that may be what you want, but whenever you're creating something like this, like a chain or a rope, you're probably going to want to keep it constant. So let's choose that again. I'll clear everything from that layer. And lastly, let's choose something like a rope. And if you have a 3D connection device, you can sort of create this and rotate around. And maybe use the move tool to tweak the shape and proportions a bit. Okay, so that's going to conclude this look at the snake tool. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.